so it's fine. Yeah. Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode from Hadith Tech. And hi Rishit, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How about you?
It's good, thank you for that. And how was like your last year? I think it's been like 9 months since we last met.
Yeah, so we actually last met at GitHub Universe, which
Yeah,
which is really fun. San Francisco, and yeah, that is really fun. The
yeah,
conference is also awesome. So yeah, it's been pretty fun since then. So at that time I literally like just started university, and
yeah.
uh, and right now I'm in my first year. So I've had like a really awesome first year experience. I also got to travel a lot, so that was fun.
That's great. And how was your first year at university? I think when I met you, you were at this last at the same time.
Yeah, so my first year at university was great, and there were a lot of differences. So I had this. I wouldn't say a cultural shock because I had been to US and Canada earlier, but
Yeah,
I'd say still it is quite different for me and a bit of getting used to. So I actually come from India and I moved to Canada just for my university.
yeah.
So so I moved to Canada 1 month before GitHub Universe.
Okay, that's interesting. So you just moved, and after a month, you went to the universe again to visit USA.
So here's the interesting part. So I moved to Canada,
Yeah.
and in less than a week there was GitHub Field Day Canada, and
Okay.
and then 2 days after GitHub Field Day Canada, so that's like 1.5 weeks since I moved to Canada. I
Yeah.
went to the US, and then I came back, and then when I went to the US again, and then I went to GitHub Universe. So it's been like a lot of travel.
That's great. Like, I think you are lucky to have, or like more privileged to have such kind of events and ability to join them.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of cool conferences in tech, and I think the tech industry in general is quite privileged to have these really welcoming conferences. Yeah,
Yeah, awesome. And for that, like, I would like to go to the beginning of your story and like, how did you get into tech?
sure. Yeah,
So,
so
what was like your first time when you started coding, and what was the reason for you to go into tech?
yeah, that is quite long ago. Yeah, sure. So I actually didn't start by writing code at all.
Yeah,
Um, so I was always like really passionate about mathematics, and so I'd been doing math and science very well since high school, and also I doing the math Olympiad and science Olympiad
yeah,
since high school. So that was quite a fun experience, at least for me, because I really love the subjects. So yeah, so I was pretty interested in that, and it's also quite a natural transition if you come from a math background to get
yeah,
into CS. But what I did get into was robotics back then, and
yeah,
I was quite passionate about robotics. I did it for quite a few years, and I used to do like all sorts of stuff with Arduino's and Raspberry Pis. And oh, did you like ever have a chance to play with Arduino's and Raspberry Pis?
I'm not sure about the first one that you mentioned, but like I tried Raspberry Pi a couple of times, and I think I'm not sure if you know about that. Like, but do you know the Pi hole project?
Yeah, yeah.
That like filter all your phone network to get not get like any kind of ads. So I have it and have some kind of played around with that.
Yeah, it's just like really fun,
Yeah,
and especially when I was younger, it was a lot more fun because I was seeing it for the first time, and I'm pretty sure like when you saw like the possibilities with the Raspberry Pi, you'd be
yeah, that's
so
awesome.
yeah, that was the same thing with me. And then I went to the World Robotics Olympiad and all that, and that was also a really fun experience.
Yeah,
Wait, uh, so just some while after the World Robotics Olympiad, I went there and
we
did all that.
just like a question here, a fast question. So when you went
Sure.
to the robotic Olympiad, like how old were you, or let's say in which grade you were?
Oh yeah, so back then I was in seventh grade.
Seventh grade. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and I had been doing like a lot of robotics since like formally I had been doing a lot of robotics since fifth grade.
Yeah,
That's when I thought it would be interesting to explore this. And yeah, so around when I was in so after I came back from the Olympiad, I thought I want to get more involved with software, and
yeah,
uh, and I did exactly that. I started exploring a bit of software, and uh, yeah, I also started doing a bit of Android stuff, just because it seemed really interesting back then, and I knew
yeah,
nothing about it. So I thought, well, let's explore it. So I did a bit of that, and then in 2018, I actually saw so a group of three people in 2018,
yeah,
Jeffrey Hinton, Jan LeCun, and Bengio won the Turing Award. So the Turing Award's like Nobel Prize in computing,
yeah,
and they won that for machine learning stuff they had done. So I was a kid back then, and I saw that, and I was really blown away, and that's when I thought like this is what I want to do with my life. So
yeah,
so it was actually a lot of things that happened in 2018 for me. So these three people winning the Turing Award, and then just seeing like I also came across a really cool YouTube channel called Lex Fridman, and
yeah,
I saw like one of his podcasts, and that happened. And I saw the Andrew Ng course, and yeah, so I saw that, and I thought it really well correlated with the math background I had from earlier. So all of these things happened pretty much in the same time in 2018 for me. So that's when I thought I really want to get into machine learning research.
yeah.
So yeah, that's like pretty much
That's
how I got
awesome.
excited about all this.
That's great. Like, it's really great that you have like some kind of mathematical background at the same time that you try to move it to machine learning, and like you know that machine learning is based on mathematics. Like for the people who know that, but like not everyone think about it in this way. For here, I was like wondering about like when you started with math, and I think it was like early at your middle school and uh, like into your school and life. So was it kind of influenced because of your environment or because of your school, or is it like because like you just like math for, or is it because of family or something like that? So what was like the main, let's say, ignite for for passion, for your passion?
Yeah, so I think it is mainly just liking the subject, and yeah, yeah, I really love the subject and
Yeah,
all sorts of cool stuff you could do with it. So yeah, I really love that. I really loved Olympiad math when I saw it. And Olympiad math is quite a bit different from school math or yeah, any of that. So I really loved it the moment I saw it. I
yeah,
really loved working on problems for like 5 hours, 6 hours for a single problem. I really love that stuff. So yeah, I really love that. That's how
that's
it came
awesome.
through.
So it's like more of solving problems, and then you move there to robotics, and then you move to machine learning.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. And for machine learning, when you start like at 2018, what kind of the first thing that you started working on it?
Yeah, so back then I had a good math background, and so the first thing I saw was the Andrewing course on Coursera, and that was like a
Yeah.
really good introduction to what traditional machine learning has been about. So a lot of the stuff that has been discovered in the 1900s and early 2000s. So that was a really good introduction to all that stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
and that kind of also helped me develop this appreciation for the fields of optimization and real analysis, which is what a lot of um, which is what a lot of core machine learning is about. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so it helped me develop this appreciation for it, and then I also took a look at quite a few quite, quite a few courses. Uh, I directly took like university courses, some of which were available online. So I took
Yeah.
those, and that helped me like strengthen my basics pretty well. So at least allowed me to say that okay, I know what this term means and how it works.
Yeah.
So that was a good introduction to stuff, and then I just started teaching myself, reading papers and implementing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And from here, like I would like, so before going to implementing papers at you had like some kind of work with TensorFlow. I think you get spotlighted there and you get some kind of prizes. So what was this before the paper implementing or after that? So we can like move it in the podcast.
Yeah. So back when I was starting, I took a look at TensorFlow, and that was interesting because you could do a lot of the machine learning stuff and
Yeah.
get away with not writing boilerplate. So I started contributing to TensorFlow, and yeah, just writing out, yeah, just contributing to open source in general. That's also how I got introduced to the open source community and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So so yeah, this was like I got involved with contributing to TensorFlow uh, exactly when I was going through all these courses. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. And for implementing papers, like, how did you start with it? Like, because like a lot of people who go to university, they don't know about implementing papers or even doesn't like think much about that. So you were one of the, let's say, unique ones, and you started about it early. So how did you start with implementing papers, and what was your approach for the first paper?
Yeah. So I'd rather say that maybe you could look at it as so you just implement a paper to learn more about it, and
Yeah.
yeah, just try to look at it from that sense, and it's often pretty helpful to do that because it's pretty helpful to uh, it's pretty helpful to read a paper and teach yourself stuff that way. I've taught myself more stuff than I've learned from others. So so that's been great because you can teach yourself a lot that way, and I still do that. But and that adds quite a lot. You understand from the author's perspectives about what worked, why do you do that, and you actually for a lot of the papers you actually get to understand the really important question: how did you come up with this idea? What was the motivation? Because the final goal is coming up with the with new ideas yourself. So so this is really good because you get to understand from the author's perspective. Why did he do that? Why did he think this would improve? Why did he do this experiment? So that's great. But what implementing papers allows you to do is see the same things from your own perspective.
Yeah.
So think about stuff like, oh wait, when I was reading the paper, I thought this was a great idea, but there is this minor little intricacy which I never thought about. And when I actually do it in code, it turns out that this breaks the whole stuff. So how do you fix this? Or how do you work through this? Or how do you work through this minor little detail? So things like this, I think, are pretty useful, and you get to learn from when you try to implement these papers yourself, and
Yeah.
and you also come across ideas. So you just think that, oh, maybe I could switch out this part for this. Maybe I could do this differently, and that can lead to And that's pretty useful in the field of machine learning research. A lot of my papers have come through just that, implementing other paper and thinking, wait, maybe I can do this better.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of papers, like, or let's say science in general goes with that path. So someone will, you will go on top of shoulders of other people.
Yeah, shoulders of giants. Yeah.
Yeah. So as for that, like, do you remember your feeling when you started to implement your first paper, and how much of time did it take from you?
So it actually wasn't something planned as such, and I didn't do it for the sake of implementing a paper, but I pretty much so I was pretty much just like going through. I was going through a different kind of attention mechanism paper, and I thought there is no open source implementation for this yet by the authors. Uh,
Yeah.
so so let's give it a try. That's just like what I thought. I had no goals of learning from it or anything. I just thought,
Yeah.
let's give it a try, and I'll make it open source. I'd worked on creating open source projects earlier and all that, so I thought, okay, I'll do it and make it open source. Yeah, that was just like how the first paper went through.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, you see, like your, let's say your story from moving from just reading this. By the way, we have some kind of people from the chat. We'll just like go and say hi to them. We have Isra
Hi.
saying hello, and we have Kai Wali, I think. So
Yeah,
he's
he's
saying,
also a campus expert.
ah, awesome. So we have another campus expert here. Okay, great. Hi, Kai Wali. Kai Walia, if I didn't pronounce it wrong. So, uh, and we have Abdi Karim as well. Abdi Karim Lahmouni is saying hi. So to get back to the papers and that, I mean, like, so you were in coding and you started after that to implementing papers, but like, what was the first reason for you to read a paper? And how did you get to know to the papers? Like, because you know, a lot of programmers just like go with programming, go with like, if you think about like new generation going with front end, and they doesn't think much about papers. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I always wanted to get into machine learning research
Yeah,
and get into research. So for a lot of research, so the way you put your work out in front of others is by writing papers on it.
yeah,
So so I just thought that, and I also heard from somewhere that so like doing all these courses got me equipped to at least g- at least understand the basics and get me equipped to like at least read my first paper. So this was like always a way to share your work with others in the community. So it was just natural that I had to go through go through it, at least for the field of machine learning research, where a lot of progress just comes through papers.
yeah, I understand that. That's awesome. And for that, like, I have a thought like about that. You know, you were in the, let's say, learning path, so a lot of people go there, and then you move to the papers. Like, a lot of people go with the idea of just like learning and getting to know stuff, and like get in a rabbit hole there. How did you get out of such a rabbit hole and move forward, and what would you advise such people?
Yeah, so I think like, oh, so you're talking about from the research perspective, and also like, so I think this also applies to software engineering, or or software in general, and they refer to it as tutorial hell, and
Yeah,
yeah, just reading stuff without trying it yourself and all that. So I think, so I think that's pretty real, because there's always this fear of trying stuff out yourself. There's so much you have to do and all that. So so that's always, so that's always like a fear you have, and I just say, but- and I just say, probably give it a try, regardless uh, of whether you fully understand it or not, whether you fully understand the tech or not. Just give it a try, and along the way you will fully understand the tech and make an effort to do that. uh, and that helps quite a lot. because you understand things at a faster pace, and you understand some things which probably would never be captured via a textbook, or probably some things about running experiments efficiently, how to manage experiments, stuff like this, which should not be best captured by a textbook, or not be best captured by you seeing someone else do it. So, so I think understanding that there are some of these things which might not be best captured by other forms of content. So, so yeah, just giving it a try for the sake of it, just to understand. Oh, yeah, just to understand what are these aspects.
Yeah, that's interesting. You remind me of like one of my professors at university. Like his name is Ali Nizam. So he once mentioned that you will not be able to learn about swimming without going into a swimming pool and jumping inside it. Like you will not learn about swimming from books.
I see. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's kind of the same approach.
yeah,
Yeah, awesome. And for that, like, I want to move right now so to know more about like your open source. You started with open source as like when you start implementing your paper, and then uh, I think right now you're involved with a couple of open source communities like the GitHub Campus Expert, the community at your university, and Kubernetes, I think as well.
yeah.
Yeah, what kind of communities you are like engaging with them right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm pretty involved with a few open source projects, and I maintain, or I'm a maintainer, or I contribute extensively to a few projects like Kubernetes, TensorFlow, PyTorch, Free Code Camp as well. So yeah, these are like these are like a few projects I've been maintaining or extensively contributing to,
Yeah,
and yeah, it's been pretty fun doing that. And I also uh, build quite a lot of projects myself, uh, some of which have been pretty popular. So
that's
yeah, that's been fun. Yeah, and those are like the open source projects or communities I'm involved with.
yeah, that's cool. And from here, like before going into the projects and the things that you are doing there, so from like outside their perspective, they would see like you are doing a lot of stuff, and how can you find time for all of that?
Yeah, that's a challenge, and I guess the truth is like, yeah, even if you do lesser stuff, there will still be no time.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see.
there will always be no time to do stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah, you just happen to make time for it somehow. I don't know how, but I think like one of the things that still helps me is, and this is like pretty much to myself, and I don't know if it works for everyone else. So just think if this works for you. But what has worked well for me is just doing whatever I like whenever I like,
yeah,
and that's like, if I think I want to study today, I want to study today. If I, let's say, don't want to study tomorrow, I'll not study tomorrow at all. And just trying to not force stuff out of me and let it flow naturally instead. I think that helps me quite a lot. Might not be the same for everyone, but
yeah,
that helps me quite a lot manage my time and allow me to somehow do all the stuff. Yeah.
yeah. That's understand. Like, I just remembered the Parkinson law. Have you ever heard about that? It's it's like
Sorry, how I heard about what?
Parkinson law.
Oh no, I haven't.
You know, so for Parkinson's law, it's saying like if you set a project for a specific of time, it will always take that time.
Oh yeah, yeah, that I've heard of. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's like if you set a 1 week for a project, it will take 1 week. If you set like 2 days, it will take 2 days.
that's surprisingly true. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And for that, like, so you have been, you mentioned that you are maintainer of a couple of open source projects, and you have been like with TensorFlow and a couple of other machine learning frameworks. So, how did you start like contributing to them? What was your journey there, and how can someone like follow the same steps or like how can they modify their own journey?
Yeah. So 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 I was just thinking that I have been using TensorFlow quite a lot, and at that time I didn't know that there's like this huge open source community that helps do a lot of stuff around it. And like this is not true for TensorFlow. That was just like one of the projects I first got involved with.
Yeah,
But this is true for a lot of open source projects, especially for stuff like Kubernetes, which is completely managed by the community.
yeah,
And the community is what does it. There's like no one. There's no company. I mean, there are a lot of companies supporting it, paying employees to work on it, giving the project money directly, and all that, but it's not a company, and the open source community is what runs it. So I didn't know about all this back then, but what I saw is there's this open source project I'm using, and there was something wrong with it at that time. I can't even seem to remember what that was right now,
yeah,
but I just thought that maybe I could help fix this for myself. Yeah,
yeah,
that was the main motivation. I want to fix it for myself. And along the way, I understood, oh, if I'm fixing it for myself, it could help like all the thousands of people using the project.
yeah,
So like just that realization is pretty crucial. That yeah, maybe I want to make stuff better for myself because I'm using it, but along the way, it could help quite a lot of people. So yeah, that's just how I got involved with open source projects. Although my first contribution, I created an issue and then created a PR to solve that, was just for my own self.
yeah. I
It
see.
was an issue which I was facing, so I did it. So I created an issue on it, got some perspective from the community, created a PR to fix it, but that was just for myself. A very selfish motivation. Yes.
Yeah, I see. So it depends like on the situation. Sometimes some people like, but like let's say, what is your main motivation in life?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I'd say that my main motivation is just to think about what more can we do with machine learning, or yeah, what new can we do with machine learning. Uh, so I'm pretty excited about creating better and better algorithms, uh,
Yeah,
creating algorithms which better mimic the way we learn stuff. Because I think like so a lot of current machine learning is not how humans learn stuff, and it's pretty efficient. You take gradient descent, and unlike the human brain, you can take 8 CPUs or 8 GPUs and parallelize it across everything, and you can
yeah,
run it super fast. And that's pretty good because the human brain can't do that, unfortunately, and that's a pretty efficient way to learn too. You just get like 1,000 GPUs, and you parallelize stuff across it, and you do some kind of model parallelism or tensor parallelism, and you can learn a lot faster. Unfortunately, that's not the same with human brain. So in a sense, we improved intelligence. We had some intelligence, and we improved the way we learn it, because hardware can very easily handle that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But I'm also really excited about to see and build better and better algorithms. And one of the things I've been really excited about doing, and this is especially after I came to my university, and yeah, I got like a lot of perspective from my university as well. So this is especially after I came to my university to build like algorithms which better mimic the human brain, and that's just about thinking that so right now any machine learning models you take, uh, any image classification stuff, very simple image classification stuff you take, it works on like at least a few million images, and that's like pretty little. uh, most of the state of the art algorithms are with 300 billion images and all that. So so that's quite a lot of data, and the human brain does not require that much data.
yeah,
The human brain can also learn faster with a lot less resources. So So that's something. So that's an interesting area of research I kind of found after coming to this university. Although like not a lot of my work is in that area,
Yeah,
so that's just something I'm excited about. Most of my current work has been around computer vision, which I'd say like the final motivation is to just think about how we can how we can make the learning process better, or how we can better model the learning process for vision modality. So
yeah,
especially because there's this really popular quote, and I don't know how I'd share that. Probably I can share a link to that. Wait, there's this really popular quote, and yeah, I really love that quote. Uh, uh,
sure, we can share
I'll,
the
I'll
link.
probably share it with you. Yeah, I'll probably share it with you. And but the summary of it is just thinking about how rich modalities around us are. If you
Yeah,
just think about vision, it's such a rich modality. You can see so many interesting stuff, and it's just so rich. So trying to model all of this into a computer, that's pretty interesting for me. Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome. And from here, like, I think we get like question from Kaiwalia, so he's saying like to ask you about the upcoming conferences that you have.
yeah. So Cavalier actually also goes to a lot of conferences. Both of us first met at a conference, and
Yeah,
so we actually met at KubeCon, and that was a really fun experience. But yeah, next up, I'm going to the Open Source Summit, which is in like 2 days. I'm going to Prague. That's a, that's a fun place, I guess.
yeah,
So, so right up there's that, and there's also ICML, which is in Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii, so that will be fun. And
that's cool.
there's like this free code camp meetup next week in New York, so that's
Yeah,
going to be fun. And then there is Europe's later in the year, which is in New Orleans. So that will, I guess that could be fun.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So and then there's of course like KubeCon, which is in Chicago. So
You will
yeah, right.
enjoy that. You are one of the main contributors there.
No, there are like a lot of people doing a lot more than me, but
Yeah.
yeah, there are like a lot of yeah, saying it out loud makes me understand that there are a lot of conferences I have to go to. Oh man.
Yeah, I see. So
And a
like,
lot of conferences which I have submitted that I want to do something at, and I've not got a lot replies. So that's scary. That will be a lot of trouble.
yeah, but like we'll be able to manage that somehow. And like for here, like since we mentioned the conferences, like I think I know you are a reviewer as well as some kind of machine learning conferences right now as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So this year as part of the program committee or a reviewer for NeurIPS, ICLR, ICML, CVPR, and ICCV. Those are really good
Awesome.
research conferences, and yeah, it's been pretty fun being a reviewer as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how is like your experience as a reviewer? Because like you have been you submitted your own papers before, and you are a reviewer as well right now, so you see the both perspective of people.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting because, um, and I'm not trying to defend it, but so like one of the things I saw right off the back was, so I actually so NeurIPS reviewers are review period is on right now, and I'm actually reviewing NeurIPS papers right now, and one of the things I saw was back when I was submitting a paper, and even right now, there is like this really negative impression on. Oh, the reviewer asked me to do 20 more experiments, and how do I explain the reviewer that I'm a small university, or I'm a university and I don't have $1 billion for
Yeah,
my paper? So how do I explain the reviewer that? And that's like a really frowned upon aspect. And I had that a lot myself, because a lot of the times the reviewers would say that, could you do a few more experiments? Could you do an experiment on my favorite data set? Could you do an experiment on my favorite model, which no one has heard about?
Yeah, I see.
So, and a natural thing which would come to me at that time was, but I don't have enough grant money. I already finished my grant money, or I'm about to finish my grant money.
Yeah,
So, how do I do it? And I also don't have a lot of time. So, but now I mean, it's still the system needs to be changed in some way, but the peer review system, but I at least get a little more appreciation for it being a reviewer myself,
yeah,
because I have to identify if what they wrote was novel enough, and what and I have to be nitpicky because I have to say like, oh yeah, so you have like, so this is just like one of my reviews I wrote yesterday, and that is like, you have like these two major contributions, but one of these major contributions is just like a reword of this paper from 10 years ago. And
yeah,
that sounds very odd because, like, who would read a not so popular paper from 10 years ago and think about, well, this changes it a bit, but I have a bit more appreciation, I think, for
yeah.
this kind of stuff as well. I don't hate it as much as I used to back when I
I
was
see.
just submitting papers and getting bad reviews, or even getting good reviews. Uh, but yeah, I got a little more appreciation because right now I have to put in the work and see that is what they are saying really new, or maybe it's just like two people had the same idea.
Yeah, I
So,
see.
so I get a little more appreciation for that. Yeah.
Mm. And for that, like when you mentioned that you have a major contribution that has been like in another paper 10 years ago, do you like when you read the paper, do you just remember it or do you like research the stuff about the paper again
Oh
as
no,
a viewer?
as a reviewer, I need to be pretty particular about uh, making sure that what I say was done in this paper was actually done in that paper.
Yeah,
And yeah, yeah. So whenever so I think like this is one rule I always stand by, which is even if you're writing a paper, if you're writing an article, if you're writing a review, if you're a reviewer for anything, or whatever you're doing, uh, if you reference something, if you say that, oh, I reference this paper or I reference this article or something, you need to read through the whole thing. That's
yeah,
like a rule of thumb. Whenever you're referencing it, just read through the whole thing right then. That's it. That's at least what I do, and that's what's suggested to do for a lot of research stuff, or for the area of research in general. Yeah. So I always make sure to abide by that. Yeah.
yeah. So you don't like just throw some paper and you don't read it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or even if I remember it, I still need to read it again. At least when
Yeah,
I'm saying that I'm referencing this, I make sure to read it again. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. And so for the paper that you mentioned, you just remembered it and then you mentioned it, right?
Y- Yeah.
For the review, yeah, okay, awesome. And from here, I would like to know more about like since you are a reviewer and you have lots of contribution there and you already have like some kind of let's say repetition about that and a good repetition in the industry as well. Uh, how do you see like the future, or let's say how you see your years at university right now? How do you see like the next 3 years, or let's say next 2 years and a half somehow in the university?
Yeah. So the next 2 years, uh, just like right now, I'll still be in university, working with the research groups at my university, and uh, but yeah, in the next 2 or 3 years, I plan to like work a bit more on uh, work a bit more on work on some better ideas, and yeah, that's just like what I hope to do in the next 2 to 3 years, because I really love working in the area I am in right now. So
Yeah,
I just plan to do more research in that area. Yeah.
that's great. And for that area, like, uh, since you are already contributing, what kind of or writing papers, what kind of projects you are working on it right now for that area? For I think your area is, as you mentioned, like visual modality.
Yeah, so right now I've been pretty involved with computer vision stuff, and I have been since more than a year or so,
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty interesting. With also, so right now I'm working on a few projects. So I also happen to uh, so I recently released a paper that was accepted at ICLR, and we happen to uh, find a better way of training models for lesser amounts of data.
yeah,
And yeah, that was like one of the projects I very recently completed, and I'd also been working on a bit of software. So so actually, this is an open source project, and I happen to put billion parameter vision transformers in WebAssembly and run them with WebAssembly. So
yeah. That's awesome.
that's been a project I've been working on, and there are a few more, but like yeah, these are the ones which are pretty much fully fleshed out and out in the open right now.
Yeah, I see.
And I completed them like so, especially the Wasm project which I was talking about. I completed that like less than a week ago, and yeah,
Yeah,
I'll still be working on like trying to add more models and trying to support different modalities, uh, but yeah, I just like got through the first stages a little while ago, so very recent stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I see. That's awesome. Like even like working with a WebAssembly is like super awesome because like I from the people who I met, I never knew someone who is working on that. I just like know it as a topic, and like a lot of people are just like avoiding it because, or let's say not avoiding it. A lot of people not using it because like they are don't need that. So what was like your need for going with WebAssembly?
Oh yeah, so I've just been exploring that quite some time ago, and so I really loved like some of the propositions it had, the sandbox model and all that. Those are actually pretty interesting. So yeah, I just like loved some of its propositions, and I started contributing to some WebAssembly projects, and also started maintaining some WebAssembly projects, so which are pretty popular. So so yeah, that was like pretty much how I got excited about WebAssembly. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And for maintaining, since you mentioned it again, I was like wondering when you mentioned like being a maintainer, like are you in like let's say the GitHub organization of that project, or is it like you are just contributing from outside and joining their Discord and Slack stuff on their network?
Yeah.
How
So
like you become a maintainer there?
yeah. So I'll talk about this for open source projects, and so if you're excited about some open source project and you think you'd do a great job at maintaining the project, so first of all, what a maintainer means is you hold responsibility, and that's thinking about stuff like you are now one of the owners of the project. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the way you think about it. You'd probably contribute. You'd probably contribute a bit more. You would be the one deciding if some person sends in a PR, does that PR get in or not? That's usually what being a maintainer means. You would have some kind of push access to the project, and yeah, just being responsible for the project, or at least being responsible for a part of the project. uh, that's what being a maintainer means as a role, and
yeah,
different communities have different ways of being a maintainer. So uh, so yeah, but most of the communities do it in a way that you have been contributing for a long time, you have been
yeah,
making meaningful contributions, and maybe they could use your expertise uh, to like grow the project better. So at that time they would probably ask you to be a maintainer. That's how most communities and all the communities that I've been working with operate. So I've been just been contributing to them for a long time, and I'd been making a few impactful contributions which impacted quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
So they just thought that maybe he understands the project well, and he can help us quite a lot. So maybe you could ask him to be a maintainer. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. That's awesome. And since you are like mentioning being a contributor for a long time, like, does it take how many months does it take, or is it depends on the, let's say, value of the contribution you do?
Yeah. So at least for like a lot of the communities I know, or the projects I know, sorry, uh, it's like not a fixed time. It's just about showing your interest and making the first initiative, uh, or working on solving some or making some impactful contribution at the end. Yeah.
Yeah,
So usually it's just based on the impact of your contributions or
I
showing
see.
your
And
interest to do so.
that's cool. That's interesting. And from here, like, I would like to know about like how you see the future of, let's say, machine learning and open source as well.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's always this thing about uh, if some company is doing some machine learning research, they always have this thought about should we make it open source, and that's a big thing because uh, or could we make a product out of it and probably generate more profits, or could we do both?
Yeah,
Uh, so I'll share my views, and these are most certainly biased, very biased,
based on
but
your experience. Yeah,
yeah. And this is not true, right? This is just what I think, and this is most certainly not true. Uh, and I don't know what is really true or what would happen in the future.
you don't
So
know. Maybe like in 10 years, you will find like your insights right now becoming true.
yeah, but one of the things I personally think will happen is a lot of machine learning will get more and more open sourced, and yeah, a lot of the research will also get more and more open sourced, and in terms of the field, I think in the next 10 or so years we could probably discover like a better ways of learning, and probably even uh, doing away with gradients at all, and yeah, this is got like better ways of learning. um, and I think like in the next few years we would also see the rise of not building models from scratch, and just fine tuning or adapting models in some way for so adapting like previous large models in some way, and see a decline in building models from scratch. I think I that's like my educated guess on what would happen in the next few years.
Yeah, that's okay. And from here, like, I just remember the paper that on published, not paper, but like the newsletter that we're talking about the open source community that's been in front of OpenAI and Google. I've, do you remember? Did you read that, or did it catch your eyes somehow? It's like talking about building mods for
Oh,
OpenAI and Google.
oh yeah, yeah. I read that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that?
Hmm. So not that I have any stake or anything, and
Yeah,
not that I have the ability to comment, or that my comment makes any value, but just like off the top of my head, what I think is, uh, so right now, with a lot of machine learning being written as papers, uh, so GPT wasn't a paper though; it was a technical report, and
yeah,
that's a safeguard, but unfortunately, it is just like an engineering effort. So at least their engineering efforts are a safeguard right now. Uh,
yeah,
no one can no one can copy their engineering efforts. The
yeah,
models they used were very well known in the community, and all the science part of it, so to say, was already done by the community, not by OpenAI. And
yeah,
it has been being done for a long, long time. RLHF, which is a major thing in getting ChatGPT working, was also discovered by someone else. So with like a lot of this open research already out, it really all boils down to how much data and compute do you have. And
Yeah,
I think though that's true, there are also quite a lot of problems for which just adding scale or so for a lot of problems right now, um, it's also true that you just give me $1 million and I'll solve it. I'll do it better than anyone else. You just give me
yeah,
$1 million. That's all there is to it. But for a lot of problems, it's also true that just doing it at a larger scale or just improving the scale does not solve everything. So so I think like these problems are also very impactful to solve, and these problems also demonstrate like think of doing something new and not just scaling stuff up, doing something new altogether. So I
yeah.
think these problems will are pretty prevalent, and people will also start taking a look at problems where does not solve everything.
Yeah, that's understandable. Like, when you think about like, I once had this kind of conversation before with someone else. Like, uh, I don't remember with whom, but I think like it was with Ivy founder Daniel Linton at the podcast, and I mentioned that you see that when you don't think about scaling up project or you don't have like a large computing power, you will think about the algorithm itself, and you will think about the mathematical model, which is like harder than scaling, but like it can find you a unique, or let's say a novel, a set of art project or set of art idea that you can do.
Yeah. But I completely agree with that, and that's like pretty much coinciding with what I just said. Uh, but I also think that a lot of problems it has been true that, or we have at least seen that. Okay, maybe you did not discover a really new idea, but you can just like scale it up and the models get similar performance just by scaling it up. So yeah, both of them are pretty prevalent. There is also a lot of need for even more scale,
Yeah,
and there is also a lot of need for newer ideas. There's a need for both of them. Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome. And from here, just like since we talked a lot about your experience and how you started at the early age and all of that stuff, uh, like I just thought right now, if someone who is at like let's say at university and at fourth year and he hasn't been a reviewer or haven't done any of this awesome stuff that you have been done, like what would you tell them, that can they catch up, or would they what would you suggest them to do,
yeah.
or
So there are
or should they feel desperate and just like go?
no. So I think like there are a lot of people doing even more cooler stuff than me, working on a lot of cooler research than me. So I need an answer to this. How do I just give up, or do I continue to soldier through? I need an answer for it. So it's not that someone else needs an answer for me. I'm looking for the same answer. And around the way, what I've observed is working on this research just is fun to me, and thinking about newer algorithms is just fun for me. So I keep doing it regardless. I
Yeah,
keep doing it regardless of whether I see other people doing cooler research than me, or I see other people who have achieved a lot more than me. I keep doing it regardless because it's just fun for me. And there's
yeah,
always this idea of imposter syndrome in tech,
yeah,
because you'll see a lot of people doing a lot of really cool stuff, and especially when you go to conferences and all that, you'll see a lot of people doing a lot of really cool stuff. So you'll always face this imposter syndrome. And yeah, I think at the end it just boils down to thinking about, do I really, is this really fun for me? If so, I'll keep doing it and I'll try to do something.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great advice. Like, and for me, I want to think more about like the people who are, let's say, uh, the people who like finished university but they didn't write any paper or they didn't contribute to any open source project, and we might have like a lot of people who are listening to this podcast from that kind of people. So, and they would feel like they are kind of lost everything, and or they feel bad because they didn't start at early age, what would you like tell them?
Yeah, so my opinion is that uh, yeah, it's never too early to start, and also that doing any of this is not required. As in, uh, you don't contribute to open source or just for the sake of it.
Yeah,
I do it because I kind of like it, but you don't have to do it. It's not necessary. There are a lot of people just using the projects, using the community's power and not going back to it, and that works too. That's what the open source projects are for.
yeah,
You use it without and just use others work. And that's okay as well. You don't necessarily have to do it all. So yeah, I just think of it as uh, there's no way you can do everything. So you have been working on something, and now it's just time to work on something else. If you haven't been involved with open source and you feel like you want to, there's just some other things you have been working on. So now is the right time to take a look at some other thing. So yeah, it's never too early, and uh, yeah, just think of it as trying to take a look at something else other than what you have been doing. So
yeah. That's awesome. And like to get back to you, so I was thinking like doing open source, doing research, being at university, going to conferences, and all of this stuff you are doing together. Um, have you ever like felt burnout, and how did you solve that? If you ever felt it?
yeah, so this is interesting, and um, I so before coming to university, that's less than a year ago,
Yeah,
not even a year, so 6 months or 8 months or so. I always thought that at least I used to back then, that burnout wasn't real, and it is just that you do stuff properly, and yeah, was at least at that again I'm clarifying. I thought that back
at that
then,
moment, yeah,
yeah, that you just keep doing stuff. What this was this stuff about being tired and all that? That
yeah,
doesn't sound true to me. You just keep doing it. But when I came to university, it was pretty interesting because I had to do this. Plus, university was uh, I wouldn't say my courses were harder, but you had to put in like this amount of work. So there was this work ethic required.
yeah,
Though it wasn't hard, you had this work ethic, and that's required from you. So the content was easy, but you still had this all of this work to do.
yeah,
So that was there, and I also had a job while doing university. So at a moment, it was just getting way too much for me, and at that point, I felt a bit burnt out. So Uh, so I think the way to do it forward is just pivot at the right time. Know that know that not everything is possible at every time, and just make the pivot at the right time. So just take a break or something. So there was a time when I took a break from traveling, especially after November.
yeah,
So November is like a peak season for conferences, and there was in November I had like six or so flights in the same month, six or so different trips in the same month.
yeah. That's too much.
So every time I came back to Toronto, I waited in a day for Toronto and then went back, and this happened for like six times in the same month.
Yeah,
So that was so at that time I just understood that this is a time to take a pivot, and took a break from traveling at all.
yeah,
So and that was pretty helpful because yeah, I think that worked out well, and that at least helped me in my sense. uh, so I think doing the making a pivot at the right time is just what you need to understand. On the same note, I also feel that uh, you shouldn't make so I also feel that you should always try to be the best self. So
yeah,
so always give it your best, and try to do more if you want to. And that's at least been something I've been across. So yeah, I just want to try and get more and more out of myself, because uh, yeah, I just want to improve myself. So so those are two conflicting thoughts, but finding the balance between them is, I think, what work what will work best for you. So just finding your balance for both of these conflicting things, or doing more and more and improving yourself, versus finding a pivot at the right time. So yeah, just find the right balance between them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, and finding the right balance sometimes is just like not easy. It's kind of like the same situation with work-life balance stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So, so you asked me a hard question, and I left you with a harder question. So
Yeah. So like the one who's like thinking how to find the balance. So like how to prioritize myself. It will be like hard for anyone.
yeah, it's pretty hard, but unfortunately, I think you have to find the answer for yourself.
Yeah,
I I, I unfortunately can't help a lot. What works for me won't work for you.
you are right. And like the situation and the circumstances of each person is different.
Yeah, yeah,
Even the environment as well. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
awesome. I think like we have been for 1 hour right now in the podcast, so I really enjoyed the conversation with you, and it was really super awesome
Likewise.
to know about like your work and everything. I still have like a lot of stuff that I would like to ask you about and listen to you and let's say share about stuff. Like even you had like the paper we prepared code contribution that you had, and you had some like works with the Linux Foundation and the Open JavaScript Foundation scholarships and all of that stuff. I was wondering like wanted to ask about all of that stuff, but like I think we don't have much time right now. And thank you for that. Thank you for joining. And before ending, do you have like a sentence that would you like to share with people who are in, let's say, in less privileged area and who doesn't have access to all the open source and machine learning stuff? What would you suggest them or give them an advice?
Yeah. So uh, I I think like not an advice, just a thought, and think about it if you want to. Don't think about it if you don't want to. But yeah, my thought is always make it clear from the start that what gets you excited, and why are you excited about something, and 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 if it's fun for you, just keep doing it. Just keep working on it, and that could be whatever. It could be outside tech. It could be something inside tech as well. So it could be whatever. But just try to identify this as soon as possible and start working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, like also, uh, it was really fun chatting with you. And yeah, thanks for having me here.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for accepting. Like it took a couple of times to accept to like organize all of this stuff, but like it's awesome to listen about your experience. You reminded me, by the way, with like my conversation with Brian Douglas, the founder of Open Source. He mentioned that like some people would like to work from 9 till 5 and would like to leave their work, and that's totally okay for them. You don't have, not everyone should be like superstar,
Yeah, yeah,
and
uh,
that's it.
yeah. So
So
good. Thanks.
awesome. Thank you for that, and thank you for joining, and thank you everyone for joined us today. We hopefully we're looking for you to join the next podcast. And if you are an Arabic speaker, we have our Arabic podcast as well that's going every week these days. And just stay tuned for the next stuff. And thank you for that.